by Sunday. But it's so it ended up getting some I guess a lot of the reviews were with everybody. Maybe it wasn't so much disappointed as what they were expecting. So I loved it. It was awesome.
Get your beers. Let's go.
So the recline right now.
Bye.
All right.
Come on. Ryan, is it working?
Yeah.
Lights. All right, welcome everybody. Got an action-packed evening. Here. Actually, let's see. Bill, you want to go first?
Sure.
There the green stuff is.
Find it now on this foreign machine.
Goodbye.
I stuck it in the downloads. Local directors. So what's your name? Should work. All right. So the project I want to talk about is actually. What's that?
I'm laughing. You spelling errors.
That's spelling errors in there.
Show me. I don't see any.
I would pay attention, looking for the spelling.
Yeah. It's a big one. So it's a housing project that to me, if I got thinking about it, sort of reminds me of a hackerspace. So it starts out with the reason for this is looking at some housing challenges and some things that I want to accomplish that I think that we need to do. One of them being, right now, we're all aware, there's just not enough housing, or there's not enough housing in the right places, or for the right amount of money. Something else, there's two things here. This is the first one that seems important to me, thinking ahead with what's going on, is climate change. It's going to be a big problem, and a lot of the ways to develop and implement some resiliency to that is in the way that we build housing. It's an opportunity to do something new to address that. The pandemic, I've come to the realization or the acceptance that it's not if there's a next pandemic, it's more when is the next pandemic going to be here. This is another way to respond to that with what we learned from the first time we went through some of the aspects of this kind of project. And then a little bit more as we go on. You've got some people are living on their own, getting more lonely, the isolation that goes with that. And like the climate change and the pandemic, just the political upheaval. Read enough and you look around and you can find all kinds of reasons to get concerned about this. And I suppose the question, I've done a good job of outlining a lot of the problems. Is there a way to solve this? And I think there is. This concept of intentional community, specifically through a particular design and an idea that's called cohousing. So there's two fundamental principles to the idea of cohousing. And those are, and brace yourself, I'll lay some very high quality graphics here showing my capabilities. And there they are. I'll give you a minute to bask in that. The basic concept is that this housing community maintains the idea of private residences. So the best thing to compare it to, probably everybody is aware of, is the concept of a condominium association, where you own a portion of the whole thing, and there's a part of it that's exclusively for your use, and then there's other stuff that you basically have to share it. This takes that concept and goes a little bit further with it, you still have a private residence, just like a condominium association. But then the common elements or the shared space here, there's a lot more of it. And there's a lot of it that is intentionally put in the community to foster and support and promote the idea of the people who are living in this intentional community to actually function as an active community. As opposed to the other extreme, whereas I don't know that guy and I don't know that guy and I don't want to see him. This is the opposite of that. Pushes them together. And a lot of that is what promotes and helps the idea of dealing with the problems that I was mentioning earlier. It's a group of people working towards some common goals. Those being, a lot of it is the community activities. So you see the community kitchen and dining in this co-housing business. There's regularly held and regularly scheduled meals where the whole community comes together to prepare, to eat, to socialize, and to clean up. Guest rooms. This is an aspect where you start to differ from a condominium association. Everybody's got visitors, they've got kids, they got friends that come over. So you usually find a lot of places where we've got this room, this spare bedroom that we don't use all that often. In this concept, I don't have to put that in my private residence. I don't have to add it to the purchase cost of my private residence. Instead, we've got a few guest rooms that the whole community can share when they're needed. Car share works well. And in the Madison area, this was something I was very pleased to stumble across. There actually is a very active car share community here spread across the existing co-housing communities already. So that works well instead of everybody having their private car, where for some of us, it sits around more than it gets used. You have a car at your disposal. You have to own the whole thing. And then all the extra stuff, garden space, and you get to the point where whatever the community has as sort of the theme that brings them together. Sometimes you get a bunch of people who garden, or you get a bunch of artists, or you get a bunch of political activists. Then you'll see a community that has big workshops or has huge garden spaces. Specifically, again, here in Madison, there's an existing community called Troy Gardens. If anybody's heard of it, they have about, I think, a 30-acre parcel altogether, and they've got 5-ish acres of community garden. They have an impressive garden, but they all work in it, they all maintain. So, all the nice stuff, all the problems, how does the thing actually come together and how does it work? So it starts that you have a group of people who are minimally like-minded in the sense of they want to be part of a community like this, and they want to have some say, some input into how it gets built. So what do we want our layouts to be like? What do we want the spaces? How do we want everything put together? So the first part of getting it built is you get this group of people. I will not take credit for creating this fine graphics. This is what you guys were talking about, dear ChatGPT. Surprisingly, this one looks, it had to be an existing drawing somewhere because the lips are all where they belong and the eyebrows are, everything's in place. But this group of
He has
people.
fingers there. We'll see 16 fingers on it.
Find that issue, okay. And in a co-housing community, this is where you see some of the trade-offs, because your average co-housing community takes somewhere between 3 and 5 years from I have an idea to let's move in. And I would think that that's maybe half and half. You design what you want and you spend the other half of the time actually getting the place built. In reality, I finally accept this, that of a 5-year plan, the average community takes about 4 years to talk everything to death. Then they finally decide they want to build something, they find a parcel, they get the building constructed in a year. The 4 communities that are here again, the longest one, I believe it took 1.5 years to get actually their building. The other 3 got the building put together and occupiable in a year. But there's things you can do about it. It has a lot to do with the community and how the community works together.
When you say community, how big of groups are we talking for those ones that are examples?
Depends on the group of people. The trade-off, there's a fair amount of research and a fair amount of quantity of communities across the United States. The bottom limit is about 12 to 15 households. And the almost exclusive reason that sets that, you get fewer households in any 80-20 rule kind of thing, you end up with, okay, there's one or two people who keep the whole show running. The other extreme, usually 40 households is kind of the very upper limit. Because if you think back of all of this community participation and discussion and doing things collectively, you can get to the point where you've got so many people, it just takes forever to decide it. So personally, for me, I'm looking at between 12 and about 22. The 12 is for the reason I said, you got to be enough people to distribute it. And 22, you have enough to have a good community, but you can still move fairly quickly. So once you've got all these pieces put together, you know what you want, where you want to do it. Most places in the United States don't yet recognize a co-housing association as a special or a recognized legal entity or even a financial entity. So almost all of the ones that are built, they're organized as condominium associations. There are a few that are cooperatives, but usually the condo plan works better for them. And so it's a marketing job. You sell these, you get people that are committed, everybody starts ponying up some money and gets it put together. So then you would be asking, okay, this hackerspace thing, what makes it like this? And this is what started to occur to me. There are all of these shared spaces and all of the typical household equipment. The simple stuff, lawnmowers and step ladders and wheelbarrows and that kind of thing. Within the space, you can go sort of the next level of optimizing the utilization of equipment. You don't have to have laundry facilities in every single unit. You don't have to have some of the kitchen tools that you would have. And you can get a lot more sharing, a lot better use out of it.
New Lux Cravings boxes from Taco Bell.
Yeah. Okay. And it has another aspect that works out in the intentional community part by virtue of having all of this stuff to share, to use together. That's another place where you bring the people together to work together on stuff. Oh, you're gonna make croissant today. I'd like to watch that happening. That reminds me a little bit of how things happen in a hackerspace as well. The projects in the interests, that's we're back to the ones that are maybe garden heavy. That's because there's a lot of gardeners there. They'll work together on getting something like that together. Or the Arboretum co-housing, that group tends to be very politically active. So they've got a large group of people within their community that are all marching and protesting and doing all that together. That's kind of the theme of them. And the last one, the environment about this, the creativity and the hacking. Some communities across the country that I've visited are, if you didn't look too closely, they look like a condominium association. The people who live there that way, they know each other, they work together, but they don't have much that they do that I would say is kind of unusual. But then there's other communities where everybody in the community is out building the common house, or they're building a boat in some of them, or they're doing, there's one in Washington that I was involved with that is doing experiments growing apples. They basically got a whole orchard of a bunch of different species of apple trees that they're planting. So you get all of those opportunities and sort of the, I guess you could say, the emergent behavior of that group of people coming together. So the steps, it's a little bit of redundancy. This is also an automated drawing, which I thought was pretty good. The initial phase, that group of people comes together and they're the ones that have got to figure out who are we? What kind of a community do we want to have? How many units do we want the floor plans to look like? Are we more of a bike crowd or a car crowd, or what are we doing to put that together? Once that's all coming into place and you start getting stuff constructed, then you get your people lined up and they actually, okay, I want that unit and that's the one I want to buy. We get the money together to make it happen. And then the construction is completed, everybody has moved in. Now it shifts into, okay, now it's an ongoing community that we all have both the responsibility and the opportunity to actively contribute and participate in the operation of it. And decide sort of what it becomes. The goal in the perfect world is that it's a long-term community. It's not intended, and you don't even really want it to be a transient community where somebody comes in, I'm going to live here for 2 to 3 years and then move on. Trying to build something where someone can go through all of the phases of their life in this same community. And in the really optimal thing, you get young families, have their children will actually grow up in that community. And if you have put enough of the effort and the design into it, then the ultimate goal is that people can actually age out of it in there, live out their life in that community. And that's all part of just working together as a group to say, okay, what do we need now? What do we need to change? What's working for us? And this is the end of my story. If anybody wants any more information, I would be happy to talk about it. And that's it. And well, you didn't even start the clock running down.
Questions?
How many spaces have you visited?
I would say 20-ish.
How many of them turned out to be cults? We're all thinking it, all right?
That is maybe probably not so surprisingly, the people who have not looked at them and not familiar with the idea is, oh, that sounds like a cult.
Yeah, from the outside,
That
they
sounds like
all
a
sound like a
commune.
cult, but not all of them are cults.
Yeah, none of the ones that I've seen that actually made it through to, this was built, we live in here, and we've been here for 10 or 30 years, have been even close to what you would think of as a cult. That's not to say that each community doesn't sort of form its own mindset and the way they work together. But it's this group of people that have that mindset. You don't have the typical cultish leader. So I'm not
They have brochures and stuff, and
well, you don't have brochures, you have live brochures, because the people that are living in the community are happy to spend all day with you, giving you a tour. And now that I think about that, that's another hackerspace aspect of it. Come on in here, let's take a look. Let me show you what we've done here and why this is a place that we like living.
I had a buddy who was visiting an old friend from high school downtown on like 4th of July weekend when we were, and he ended up getting accepted like one of the hippie communes that she had gotten involved with. And he comes back the next day and says, dude, she talked for like 10 hours trying to recruit me into this hippie like, it was just, yeah.
Jim,
Oh, yes, okay, so when you were looking for the description of the type of community sustainable, age in place or multi-generational community.
Mhm.
You know, so the fact that it can sustain itself, that units can turn over and people continue to join the community and may leave, as you say, age in place has a limit. I mean, when you are now in a really nursing care support, then you do probably have to sell the unit. But I mean, when you look at the alternative to the model you're recommending, your model looks pretty good. You know, the idea of going into a nursing home, because none of your family members want to, be around you, I mean, it gives you an option to, and multi-generational qualities are important. to maintain that sustainable nature.
Yep.
You have to have
Yes,
younger
resilience.
families coming up through it. So, yeah, go ahead.
So just to play the, I guess, the reverse side of that, which is, at least in this country, so heavily homes are looked at not so much as anything other than an investment that appreciates. And this would seem to put us amount of burden for most buyers on the purchase. That makes a homeowners association look like a walk in the park. Right, in terms of the additional commitment you have to make beyond home as investment, home as, you know, where I rest my head while I work at this job for this typical job, 2 to 3 years. And then maybe stay in the community for a lot of people.
Yeah, you're
But
right.
really fighting a headwind in terms of our country for a home. I expect that damn thing to appreciate every year.
Yeah.
And part of that value, I assume, is I can unload it easily. Right?
Yes, and you're entirely correct. Again, so some people come across this idea and they immediately think cult. Others come across the idea of co-housing, and what they think of, unfortunately, is affordable housing. And unfortunately, a well-built, well-designed co-housing community is not affordable housing. It's market rate housing. You get a bit more because you've got all those shared spaces that I was pointing out. But you're entirely right. It doesn't work. You can't build a durable, long-term community if people look at it simply as, I'm gonna make my investment here and sell it for $1 bazillion and get out. And probably, maybe the greatest challenge, certainly one of the challenges of getting it together, is to get the group of people together that we all want it to be a long-term community. You have to put a lot of effort into, and you have to be careful and navigate it, because of other parts about our society of helping people to self-select themselves out. Because they've got to want to come in here. Now, I want to invest into this. It is an issue.
In communities that have been established, like they get to a point where they're built a place and people have moved in, what are the common things that will cause the community to fail? And what are some signs that make it, that show that it will succeed?
Making it fail, what I've seen is the common things is the group of people will get to the point where they'll reach a sticking point. We want to raise chickens to butcher them for meat on half of the community, and the other half don't. And they just can't find a way to work around it. And some of them completely fail and they give up, or they splinter into, okay, let's have two groups. You got the chicken group and the non-chicken. We'll do that. And sorry, I forgot your second question.
What are some signs that it will succeed?
It's the opposite of that. The people can work through working out what we want to build and actually establish the respect for each other and the ability to communicate and to work together and to reach the point where they don't have the, I gotta have all of these things absolutely or I'm out. But instead they'll work and say, okay, these things here are very important to me. These are really neat. I'd like to have these, but I can work around them and negotiate. And if you find a group of people who are able to do that well and repeatedly, that's kind of the indication that this is going to work. We're going to get to the point where we start putting money into it. And then once it's built and we live in it, we get together. So it's the group of people. It's the effort you put into forming that good cohesive group of people.
Said you visited at least 20 of them and probably researched more. Which ones would you say have been the most successful long-term team?
There are 2 of the 4 here in the Madison area, which are going on 30 years old. There are a couple in the Seattle area that are also 30-ish, maybe a little bit longer. There's at least one that I know of in Vancouver that's got a good 30 years under its belt. California, they're all over the place. Think about it, there's one in Sacramento, I think that might be 40, been there a long time. Probably originally was some hippies that got started there. You know, the one in Port Townsend, Washington was a bunch of hippies. Now they're 70 and 80 years old. They're still going out of groups.
Is it more rural or urban?
Yes. There, and again, that's the group of people. There's the groups here, the communities that exist are basically very urban. I'm looking specifically at urban because I think it's the better way to address the pandemic issues and climate crisis, reduce the impact. But there's also other groups where we want to be out in the woods.
Last one, Bill?
Just real quick, so in the hacking, back to the hacking part, is there any of these communities who organized around the principle of designing and building new communities like that? But where you get is there any communities of architects doing this? Who are also actively building more communities to grow this?
From within an existing community, I've not come across them. There are more and more agencies and groups who are bringing together the best practices for building co-housing.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was getting at, right? Is the most natural way to educate folks about how to do it right would be living yourself in a successful
In the community, that people are passionate about building those type of communities.
Yeah.
Like,
Right?
or like-minded. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Going next. I go next. All right, get up there. Don't tell them to consistent. Using yours. Yep. Side.
Desktop.
Well, you can. You'll just like.
Perfect. Good time. So you can share your screen.
Yep. There we go. All right. Yeah, sure. That's right. All right. So I'm talk about some experiments we're doing with this thing called Shelly brand of products. They're kind of an IoT device. What they are is an ESP32 based. If you know what that type of processor is, it's kind of a Wi-Fi Bluetooth type of thing. It's about this big. If you're curious. Basically, it's relays. They make sort of a whole bunch of series of things. Relays, light, like 0 to 10, light type things. They kind of got a nice entryway in. So since it's ESP32, it's all Wi-Fi based. So you don't necessarily need like a gateway sort of base thing. Okay, just look it up on the internet, and let her go. So like very simple, like there's a light down here that's got one of those in there. I can just sort of turn her off and on. There we go. And they kind of have a nice app. They got a nice entry level thing. It's got lots of advanced features. You know, you can have like notifications, there's like activity logs, and of course you can go premium and stuff. Do all sorts of things with it. You can even like, let's see, I have it up. One of these up here. This one. So even like this light, right, it has like an access point on it. It has all these sort of settings on it where you can sort of set up MQTT settings and things like that. So what I use this for is my brother on his farm grew up as a hoop house, and I want to track temperature changes, right? So there's a different model of this UNI device, which is a UNI Plus. It looks like like a really small board. So that's what it is right here. So I kind of put together, if you know how to find the right transformers that go from 0 to 120, and you can find a way to put the board and the temperature probes like these.
We're going to box, wire it up. I guess I'm not around too. What you can make is a sort of gateway-less multi-temperature probe sensor that then sends stuff over the internet type of thing. And there's a lot of other features on this thing too. It also has like low power relays on it, a pulse counter, things like that. So what I'm doing is sort of basically taking those parts, putting it in a box, putting a bunch of glands on it, and then putting it in this hoop house with the idea of using these probes to measure the soil temperature and like air temperature, right? So we're getting close to growing season. You got to get your plants outside. When do you do it? Well, when is the temperature fine? So you can kind of see this is sort of what was in there last year. It's just kind of out there. See this little grain bin out in the, so it's just kind of where I put this in. There's a nice round barn. So there's some power nearby that I was able to run. There's some plants from last year. I don't know what these were that were kind of growing. But I ended up sort of taking that box, hooking up to my brother has like a large range Wi-Fi because this is a corn maze entertainment thing. So he has like point of sale systems. So he has this farm wide area network of Wi-Fi. And it's up there. So this is where I put it on there. So you can see there's two probes right there. There's one on the pole, one just side up on the box. And then you can't kind of see, but there's one on the ground. So after hooking all this stuff up, getting it on the network, I then needed to capture the telemetry. Now the front end does have like, you can see like the temperatures here. So you can see like, okay, probe 101 is 33, 35. And there is a little bit of like, okay, what was the last 24 hours? It's a bit crude, gets the job done. But if you got skills, what you can do is, like I was saying back here, you can hook things up to what's called MPTD protocol. And what you can do is figure out how to, through AWS, basically make a certificate that will relay packets up into the cloud. Then you can store them in a database, and then generate reports. So you can see here, here's some packets that are, oops, so this is coming off the farm. So you can see at 1942, temperature probe 102 has, what was that, 1 point, pause, let me hit the pause button. Pause. Here we go, right. So this temperature 101, 2.2, 35 degrees. Fair. So once you take that and you route it into a table of some form, so here's like the table that's basically storing it. So it's all, so eventually if I looked in here, here we go, hoop house, here's the temperature, right? So take the device, hook it up to the network, relay the data into your personal cloud, store it to a database. Next thing you do is make a dashboard. So here's the dashboard. So here we go. This is the very first instance of that. So you can kind of see, let me go back a week or so. So this is the first dashboard. So for this first one, I was just kind of like, I had all the temperature sensors kind of just smashed all of this, right? So it's like total air temperature, can't really, you can if you just look at it closely. So if I like zoom in a certain area here, kind of see this up in here, this is the basic pole and air temperature, and here's the soil temperature. So later I was doing a little bit better with my database work and my my telemetry stuff. And here I was able to separate out the individual probes. So so you can see like the air temp, you can see it gets pretty hot in there. So this is like the 31st, right? It can get up to 100, 111. But the soil temperature is still 52. But the bad part is it craters fast, right? So like it got really cold. It gets down to, what's soil temp, right? It's like 35 degrees. I think even over the last, there's other ones that were even lower. Yeah. So, and then just fun over the weekend. There's a couple go to like weather.gov API, National Weather Service, as long as it's still open, it's not privatized yet. You can pull out different temperatures. So here, there's a couple locations that I found. There's nearby, like airports that have an air temperature. So then I matched those on this thing as well, just kind of like, so you can see, we're gonna see the air temperature drops below 32. So just kind of a real basic thing. It's going to be where I'm growing my plants over the summer. So I need to get up to temp so I don't freeze my crap out there. So that's the gist of the product and what I've been using it for. Any questions? Yeah.
So can you set this up like just an internal network, or do you have to be attached to the internet?
Well, so
At
yeah.
its most basic level.
Yeah, so a Wi-Fi. So basically, you gotta have either in your house or Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, like if your phone can talk to it through the Wi-Fi, this device.
So you can just talk to a line.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, so I have a similar system set up on a cabin up in the county.
Yep.
Which is a solar heated structure. And it has 6 temperature probes. And so it was done in about the size of a shoebox.
Oh, okay.
So it's really impressive to see that you got this down to really the size of a
Yes.
duplex outlet.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing that was appealing to it, is like it's small enough that you can shove it into, like, even if there's existing wires or something in there, it's small enough that you could wire it in and shove it into an existing outlet box without having to like make it crazy. Because like I've used other stuff where I had to like take out, you know, if I wanted a Wi-Fi switch, I had to like take everything out, put in this big thing, wire it in, and then it just kind of works and it's still on a gateway or something. So yeah.
So that would fit in just a regular outlet box. Say you had an outdoor outlet, you didn't want people stealing power from you. You could actually have an app on your phone that could turn it on. Yep. And that would all tuck nicely into it.
Yep. My brother uses it to turn off and on like lights around his barn and things when he's doing stuff. So that's how he got onto it. It's like, hey, look at this, and I was like, hey, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you can switch on a vent fan, say it's
Max 8 amps. So
You
you're
can
on
do more.
limitation.
Well, yeah, I mean that particular device.
I mean, you could put a solid state relay inside of it, or it's
Yeah,
bigger.
there's ones of different intensities and specifications.
I want to know that someone is stealing your power. Some of those will do like power metering, like they measure the power draw
Right.
and like make a graph of people stealing your power.
Right. And like I think part of this product is, it says electricity tariff. So this product seems to be around the world. So I think it's meant to be like energy credits type of thing. I think that's part of their, use case of why it's used. Like my brother, he shared it with me. He hooked it up to one of these is
Are the cameras wired into it too?
no, these are just pictures. He has, where did that go? It's separate. Yeah, right. It's all devices. He has his coffee maker, right? And he's measuring energy off his, like, again, he's just proof of concept of trying to do that. So there are versions of these that do have energy monitoring type of stuff. Yeah.
What would the, like, maybe it was just not for the same argument, but putting a temperature reader on the pole.
It's just I had 3 things. I needed different temperature differential.
Oh,
It's like an aluminum pole. Does it radiate
like
temperature?
the atmosphere, air, the ground temperature, like.
Something else that we
certain
asked.
height, like, yeah.
Nothing more than that.
One more point, was that, so at the cottage there, we have a similar weather station, digital display. That
Okay.
shows wind speed and direction, outdoor air, indoor air. It too has probes, but they're one's in the module, one's up on mask.
Mhm.
So we're thinking, what's the best way we could get all that digital information, because it doesn't have a Wi-Fi ability.
Right.
So one was to get a doorbell cam thing hooked up to the Wi-Fi.
Just look at
Simply look at them. So do you think that would be a viable concept?
Well, the thing is, you have to be looking at the camera, right? So you have to always, because what's nice about this is, you know, our brother's like, oh yeah, it gets hot in there. And it's like, no, it also gets very cold, right? So it's kind of this thing, like, yeah, it's probably nice when he's in there, but he's probably not getting up at 2 a.m. It's like, oh boy, where'd all my 100-degree temperatures go, right? So it's kind of it works while you sleep and you have telemetry logs.
Oh, yeah.
So that's it.
Any other questions for John?
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Just getting excited, this idea of going for power, somebody turns on the coffee maker.
The X number of energy credits that go with our monthly.
Maybe, my God, that sounds like I'm giving away power to start with. Jesus.
All right, a little bit of delay, that's okay. What's up, nerds? So, I thought I'd do a quick little thing of, I've been working through my project with my D&D table. I had to get some circuit boards made. And if you haven't like had circuit boards made, it kind of seems like this arcane thing that's like really hard to do. And we're gonna basically go through like most of the ordering process right here and now. So kind of the problem with this is as I've been pivoted to my new mouse sensor, Pixar is kind of like the one company right now that does mouse sensors. Like everybody else kind of stopped. Pixar's the only company. They sent me like 5 copies of this little chip for free, which is super cool. Problem is, it's just this little chip, and I can't like. It's not even like the pins aren't even red for it, and it requires some support components around it. So I can't use it in the form that they gave it to me. So a quick little Googling around, like surely someone's made like a dev board or something, and sure enough, someone has $32 plus shipping. I'm in, like that's great. Like let's do it. A problem, sold out since October 2024. Cool. So the guy isn't making it anymore. So we're not screwed because other people have made dev boards for it. Problem is that they're not selling it. Like so basically somebody has made a design. This guy literally basically just copied like more or less the reference design from the manufacturer, built himself a little dev board, and was kind enough to put to the internet. Problem is I can't buy this immediately. Like he's not selling it, so it's not for sale. So there's a couple that I was looking around. Like I said, I kind of picked this one. I liked it because it had some pictures of like, here's a picture of the schematic and here's a picture of like a render of it. Some of the other ones, it's like I would have to load it into software, and then that's the 5 minutes I don't want to spend. So I'm just putting this up. So if you want to refer to the video later, you're like, I want to do this, but we're not gonna I'm not gonna read this to you right now. We're gonna go do the thing. So we have our GitHub page. I have to make sure I wait for enough of a delay. So this is the one that I showed you. Got some cool pictures and whatnot. So this is theoretically what we're going to get at the end of the day. You can just do a download as a zip. We'll get our little download. We're taunting the demo gods. We're doing this all live. I have some of this on video backup.
This ends with a credit card, right?
This ends with getting to the save to your cart, but don't actually go any further because that would put my address up on the screen. All right, so basically, and I didn't say this earlier, the thing that you want to be looking for if you're just copying something, if building your own board is beyond the scope of this talk. But you'll notice that you have like this keycad.prl and keycad.mod. That's kind of your cues that this is done in KiCad. Very hopefully KiCad is free software. So we load up KiCad. We open our little project here. think this actually might be the right one, but. Go to our downloads. Our TCAD project file. And remind you later. Thanks for acknowledging an update. All right, so it'll pop up. We can see the schematic of this thing. So basically matching the picture that the guy was kind of to give. We can even switch over to the circuit board. That looks like the picture. Cool. So if we only wanted a bare PCB made, we're basically most of the way there. But part of this is let's get it populated as well. Because like this thing is designed to have all these little teeny tiny resistors and capacitors. And yeah, you can solder, solder by hand. It's really cheap to get some of this stuff manufactured for you. And we'll see the price point soon. So you could, but we're not. So all right, that works. So the important thing that we need to add for to generate sufficient files for JLC PCB to do the manufacture is we're going to need a new field. So you should see that there's this little new field here. So we need to basically go and pick our parts. And since we're gonna have a specific fab house do it for us, then we need to like go use like their part numbers. So this LCSC is like the part supplier for JLC PCB. They're basically almost one and the same, but not quite. So that's why it's not JLC PCB part number. But as just an example, so we have an 0805 10 microfarad capacitor. So let's just go, just to show you what it looks like to go try to source one of these parts. So all this instruction is for JLC PCB. I know that other manufacturers exist. These guys are freaking cheap and really fast. I've been very pleased with everything that's come out. So if you're doing stuff for like hobby level, whatever, they work great. I'm sure there's a cleaner way to get to their parts library, but if you just scroll down to like see their assembly, you can click on like the little parts thing. Move at a reasonable speed. So they will show you things that's not in stock, not particularly helpful. Something to try to focus for is basic parts. They have basic and extended. Basic parts, they basically have loaded into like machines ready to go. Extended parts, they have on wheels that they would have to then load into the machine for you. They will charge you $3 per part type to load in the machine. Not $3 per part, but per part type. So if you can avoid it, you should try. And like this particular part, this top one is $0.009, whatever. Like we're talking really cheap part. Like you're not getting screwed on that. And then down here, you'll see the C15850. That's the part number that we would load into our table. So I'm going to close these real quick because we're not going to populate all this right now because that takes a hot minute. I have one already populated. So show you that we have in fact populated all this. Oh look, I have picked out parts for everything. Some of these will have a DNP that says do not place, so I don't want them to populate this part. That's in this particular, there's a header, really easy for me to solder, kind of hard for them to pick in place. And then the chip that I got in the mail, they don't actually have that chip to populate. It's also something that would need to be wave soldered as opposed to reflow. So they would either charge you extra or not won't be able to do it. So switch to the PCB view. Second. So there is this really cool tool called Fabrication Toolkit. I can even probably show you real quick how you even get it. I believe it's in Tools. So just at the base level of TCAD, plug in the content manager. See that there's fabrication toolkit. So this is going to generate the appropriate files for manufacture for us. Getting in the way. So we're literally doing nothing fancy. I'm literally hitting a button. I'm accepting the defaults as the defaults. And it's gonna make us a zip file. So it's gonna make a zip file, it's gonna make this production folder. So at the base level of our project, we now have this production folder that did not exist months ago. So this is enough for manufacture. We go back to JLC PCB. We add a Gerber file. Go to where that file got made. We have this .zip file. We're gonna upload this real quick. And all right, so there's a picture of the board. It looks reasonably same. We're gonna do basically no data validation right now because I'm trying to move reasonably quick. But we're gonna leave basically the default and everything. We just want cheap dev boards. So the default options tend to be the cheap ones on JLCCC. See the size, that's in millimeters, seems same. The minimum quantity you can get is 5. You can say that you want more. I've got 5 copies with this particular chip, so 5 is enough. Again, we're gonna just kind of leave the defaults on everything. That's gonna make it cheapest. So you can play with them, but half the time at most usually what I'll do is I'll switch away from surface finish and I'll do it lead free. But for this, since it's a dev board, I don't care. So the important part when you're doing the order is you say you want to do the PCB assembly. We want the top side to be the assembled side. If you can, try to keep it in economic. The only time that you would generally not be economic is if you're specialized parts that have like really tiny pitches or like more specialized, because it will be like a $30 price bump just right off the bat. We've already done that. We get 5 copies of this made, or we get 2. It's gonna be cheap enough for 5. So we're basically mostly putting passes on this thing, so it's gonna be really, really cheap. And again, I'm just gonna leave all the defaults. We're not doing anything else. Yeah. I bet.
That calculated price, is that for the whole lot of them or just each?
So that's total. These things are gonna be, we're by the end of this, they're gonna be about $30 for 5 copies shipped, including shipping. Which again, I think is pretty wild. So when I did it a month ago, it was $22 because they gave me a bunch of coupons. So we hit next, and because we hit the PCB assembly, we're actually going to get a couple extra options. So here's a big view of what we're doing. We're basically going to move through. So BOM, bill of materials. That's where we took all those part numbers, and this is how we tell what we want. So just to show you in that production folder, we literally have a BOM.csv. This is one of those generated files that was generated on our behalf. CPL, component placement or something, I don't know. It's where things go. So not only we need to tell them what we want put on there, we need to tell where they go. And positions, again, this is generated on our behalf. We're going to say process. And this is where it's going to say, you told me part so-and-so, can I match it with my library? And do I have enough to supply your order? Luckily, it is capable of supplying our order. You should probably double check all this. We're not actually ordering right now, but in general, and you'll notice that there's a couple extended in here. I was not able to fulfill everything with their basic library. So we will incur a penalty for each one of those. So we're just going to blindly say that and say, okay. So this is where you do need to generally pay a bit of attention. So this is a render of our board with parts placed on it. So the biggest thing that you will generally see is, see if I can zoom in just a bit more. So you see this purple dot is showing where the basically the top left of that part placement is. And then there's a little white dot of the chip itself of where, where it's like indexing. You need to make sure that those line up. Infrequently, but not zero, they will be like 90 degrees off is usually the most common. They usually won't be like 180 off. So you need to make sure if it's wrong, you go into that placements.csv and you just rotate it like 90 degrees until it matches up here. So that's the one big gotcha of this is making sure that your parts actually line up.
Can't you rotate it through the browser?
I don't think that tool lets you do that. I think you have to go back
I
and
use this.
okay.
No.
But and the other thing you have to make sure you do is you have to say what tariff is going to go on, which product code is going to be. But there you go. Our board, they're going to charge us $4 for the boards, and they're going to charge us $28 to do the assembly, and that includes all of the components on it. So roughly $32, and shipping's like $1.50 or so. Most of the coupons.
All of that's the extended fee for.
Yeah. So if we were able to stay more in basic, then you would shave about that. Like I said, when I did it like a month ago, they gave me a bunch of coupons. So I actually did the entire order, shipping included, for $22, 5 copies of the board. So just gonna switch back here real quick. You have pass arounds. So this is what I have made. So the one that doesn't have a chip in the middle is what they actually shipped me, and then the one that has the chip is obviously what I put together. Useful links of where we got some of the stuff. So KiCad, free software, you can build circuit board with it, but it also is open, circuit board designs. And then the fabrication toolkit is tuned for JLC PCB. So there's another one for PCB way, like some package some guys made to like kind of do the equivalent. And then sometimes JLC PCB search function really sucks. So there's a couple of alternate ways that you can try to pull it up. I believe that's it.
Yeah. So you look back at that original seller's wait list and ask them how many, it's like if you're making 5 of these for $30 and you sell them for 32, like you're just gonna list these wait lists and let's resell these.
I mean, I could resell these. The problem with this particular product is to even get the data sheet and like knowledge of how to run it, you have to sign an NDA with Pixar. So it's likely a low volume, which is probably why he's not stocking it either. He can sell you the chip, but he can't tell you how to use the chip.
What is the chip do?
So this is an optical mouse sensor. So
how long before we can play D&D?
infinite time. But we'll have fun along the way, and that's what's important.
Like is your clan waiting somewhere?
No.
Like, dude, he said he was gonna get it done.
Yeah,
From the time you hit go purchase, when do you get the product?
right. Important. About 2 to 3 weeks.
Absolutely.
If you pay for it, but I pay for I do the $1.50, super cheap shipping option.
Come on.
Milk in the D&D
It's not
cloud.
like 2 weeks.
Rapid development.
Once you're
if you
done
want
making
fast,
mistakes,
they will
like,
make it
next
get
week
you
I can
fast.
make a new one. Yeah.
You
But
can make anything with enough money instantly.
So yeah, for like 2 to 3 weeks for 5 copies of that for that price, like that's pretty wild, I think. And obviously you can put more sophisticated parts on there and that will start raising the price, but quick stuff, especially when it's passive and populated.
Do they do AOI or Flying Probe or any other testing?
So by default,
tested.
yeah, they'll do Flying Probe. I don't know what like on some of the options, like there's some level of test which you can say that you want, and that will increase the price.
Yeah, I was interested because the default was tested, which makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, they want you to have a board that works. But maybe you save 30 cents on not testing it because it's all on
yeah.
Who soldered that big chip on so crooked?
Oh. So
Is this
the one
test?
issue actually with this board, specifically this board, is that the cutout hole needed to be another like millimeter or so longer on the top. So I literally, not that one, but the one that I'm actually using, I went out with a file last Friday, and it's like filing it down until like the chip fit nice. So that it actually sits appropriately.
I mean, is that critical or do you think the software all doesn't care?
So it doesn't matter if you wanted to use it specifically as a mouse, it matters to me because I'm also using it as a camera. And so the lighting and like the arrangement of where things are is warped slightly. And so it was bad enough that I was like, well, let me just try to do this again, file it down, and now I have a really nice clean picture of it off. So
Is that ESD sensitive?
Not anymore.
Hold on. Well, that's what I don't care about, so.
Okay.
I passed around, not even warning people that the lens can technically fall off, it's not glued or anything, but that's my kind of show and tell one, the nice one has been filed at, is on my desk at home, so.
So this is what goes into the position of the.
Yeah, so tying this back to my D&D table.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep, this sensor is looking at.
We didn't get a recap, all right?
I was trying to like a little standalone. Yeah, so the idea is that this little sensor, because an optical mouse sensor is also a camera, and it's designed to look at things really, really close to it. If we have a sheet, like a transparency with micro dots on it that are just printed with like a laser printer, just teeny tiny dots of ink, plastic, technically it's tired, but then those dots convey information of location. So it snaps a photo, it says, I am here in some much larger region. But then also, because it's a mouse sensor, if you slide the token, it just uses that as a mouse at that point, says, oh, I moved Delta X, Delta Y.
Now, what would it take to upgrade to the old, that old athletic football game where the pieces would move themselves?
Ooh, yeah, that's outside the scope of this project.
Next month.
That was 70s technology, man, it's.
It's a vibrating board.
Yeah, the players running around.
The cackle would go to the back.
It's like the front of the wall.
You mentioned the where you get the wave solder at the bottom, is that related to the plastic that's on the bottom of the chip?
Sorry, so.
We had to hand solder it.
I hand soldered it, and then I just, the lens just kind of more or less kind of snapped out of there. But wave soldering, if you haven't seen, is basically, instead of like going at it with like solder or whatever, what if we just have like a pot of molten solder and just basically dipped in it, and then all the pins get soldered at once. Because otherwise, anytime you'd have like those pins, you'd have to solder by hand, or like any other stuff on the top that it's like just only on the one side, you can do a reflow process.
Fun trivia, that's why circuit boards are green. That epoxy is the keep out, that keeps the solder from sticking everywhere it's not supposed to. So they literally take the whole bottom of the board and just wave it over this, it looks like a fountain. And it solders everywhere that green mask isn't. So the mask's only purpose is to keep the wave solder.
Yeah, so we didn't click the option, but you can actually tell them what color you want. So I like getting it in black. I think black is pretty sharp on stuff. But it usually will push out the time because part of the reason it's so cheap is that they're batching orders. And so you would have to wait for a sufficiently large, like, because they're going to do a huge, multi-foot tour at once. So you have to wait for them to get enough boards together for the black one. So they're all going to be black at once. So.
Jim, did you want to share anything or?
No, I just to say that I'm going to postpone the presentation until next monthly meeting.
We
Just
expect the
because
masterpiece.
I'm trying to get enough information from myself and other artists to give a meaningful presentation on that technology. Yes, I mean, it's been around for a while, but this is, a fairly refined tool. It's a Wacom interactive digital canvas, so called. So when you touch the canvas, you're actually putting the color down as you had selected, and it's not.
Jim's a traditional paintbrush artist and he's been
Yeah.
playing around with a digital tablet.
So applied to visual art and architecture. So I'm going to run my architectural program on it to show you how you can use touch and using a different kind of mouse concept. So that'll be next step. Also, stay tuned.
All right, well, Scott,
All right.
the last.
I think I'm using the sound off of this main. So now for something completely different. I'm a member here, and one of the things I participate in is Science Fiction Sunday, Sci-Fi Sunday, and we recently finished watching season 2 of a show called Severance, and we celebrated with a theme party. during the show, one of the characters, in the actual show, one of the characters had their head carved out of a watermelon as one of the elements of the show. And so knowing we had a 3D model of Chris's head, thought it would be appropriate to do the same as part of the show celebration. I intended to do it out of a watermelon, but watermelons weren't in season. I could only find a quarter of a watermelon. So we also have kind of a pineapple theme for our sci-fi group. So I ended up needing to use a pineapple instead. So this presentation is about my process of milling a pineapple into Chris's head shape. So the watermelon from the show, as I was doing my research, actually wasn't a watermelon. It was a foam head that they carved and then they painted the. So they didn't even actually do a real watermelon. And manually carving it would have been a huge pain. Even like say like a laser cut, it's profile templates or something like that. It would have been a big pain. So it's CNC, of course. That's one of the things I enjoy doing around here. We had years ago used a rotary axis on a CNC milling machine to carve pumpkins, if people remember that project. That's a little touchy. You have to get the depths right and measure the pumpkin and everything like that. But so I thought I'm gonna just keep it simple. I'm gonna do a 3D milling operation in the wood shop using one of the routers. So I use Autodesk Fusion for both the design and the G-code generation. G-code is the machine code that runs the milling machines. I imported a mesh of Chris's head, and then I measured and modeled the pineapple I bought because I was going for a particular, you see there's like the chin and the nose were coming like the edge of the fruit. I was trying to go for that same kind of effect. So I then scaled and rotated the mesh to fit within the pineapple shape to get the effect I was going. So just share Fusion here for a minute. So this is the design portion of Fusion. If I go with the pineapple there, and so I was able to try to target the effect I was going for with relatively rough but reasonably precise. See, the chin didn't come out the way that I wanted it to, but this was my goal. And then I'll get into the manufacture piece, but Fusion also then lets you do machining operations. And so I did 2 machining operations for this: an adaptive, multi-layer adaptive cut down, and then a scallop, basically profile cut of the parts. Let me get back to the presentation. Yeah, okay, so that's Fusion, multi-layer 3D depth clear. There was about 200,000 lines of G code because I wanted to have it be fairly fine on the final layer. The final layer was about half of those lines of G code. The design is in Autodesk Fusion. Then you take that sort of pure 3D design and then you use a post processor to translate that into a machine specific G code. There's a Linux CNC post processor, which would work on a big router at the end. There's a Ham Master post processor that is used for the Stinger machine. I ended up using the Stinger machine. It had 5 inches of Z, roughly, and I needed about that much for what I was trying to do. So the converter milling, I needed 3 inches of carving, and really, when you're running a wood router, the stick out, you can't go super long. But I bought a 4-inch long, 1/4-inch diameter ball nose mill. So the mill is a sphere. It's a half hemisphere at the end. So that lets you cut profiles, and you tell Fusion, hey, I'm using a ball end cutter, so it knows tangentially where on the surface to move the tool to cut out the profile part that you need. You tell the Fusion the geometry of the tool too, and it'll tell you if you're going to have collisions and things like that, which on this model was pretty helpful to be able to do. My 4-inch cutter had about 1 3/8 inches of actual flutes to do the cutting, so you tell Fusion that too. You tell it in that adaptive clearing, like how many step down, you have to clear one layer and then clear the next layer, then clear the next layer, and then once it's all clear, then you can cut the final design. Milling pineapple obviously makes potentially make a huge mess, so there was a lot of consideration for how do I not fling pineapple over the entire wood shop. I came up with, I think, a solution that worked pretty well, which is I got one of those foil aluminum pans, and I put the pineapple in that and fixtured it down. But then I also put a garbage bag under the aluminum pan before I fixtured it down, so I could run the garbage bag over top of the whole operation as well. The cutter was a down cut cutter, which means as it cuts, the flutes generally tend to fling things down. You can also get up cut cutters, which would fling things up and be much worse. So that worked out in my favor. But yeah, so this is the actual, you can see I kind of taped the bag. You know, you need airflow on the router, running an hour and a half on the router. But then the trash bag and the pan, I bought a foil pan that was nice. I was able to bend down the edges to just clear under the gantry of the router. Here's a shot of the milling in action. That's coming through okay. So you can see there the cutter is flinging off a bunch of pineapple, but it is getting caught reasonably well. There wasn't actually a lot of juice. It was drier than I thought it would be for the milling operation. And let's go here to this is kind of the final finishing the profile. That first operation was the first layer of the adaptive clear, and then this is the final bit of the scallop profile cut. And that's what it looked like after the milling was complete. Just a little note on how I fixtured the pineapple to the table. I sliced a flat on the back of the pineapple, and then I drilled through a long 1/4 inch bit through the kind of the woody center of it. And then I put a stainless steel rod through, and you can see here I bent a couple washers at a 90-degree angle, and used the T-slots, bolts coming up through the T-slot and through the poke through the pan. And then on each end of the pineapple, I had those 90-degree washers down, and this is with the clamp off, but you can see maybe on yeah, here you can see like with the clamps on, it fixtured it down. I got it, you know, reasonably tight, and I'm like, how tight can I actually get this? So I got it snug, and that held it enough. There's not really much pressure you know, against pineapple in a cut. So here's the final result for our celebration, for our severance celebration. A little closer view there. And I don't know if you're familiar with the show, but we also had other thematic elements, deviled eggs and waffles, and things like that. So
Tell me you got a video of him dancing.
yeah, there is a video of him dancing. So yeah, questions?
Did you consider freezing the pineapple before you milled it?
Yeah, I thought with the watermelon, I thought more about that, but I think it would have been mush when it thawed if I would have frozen it. So
Yeah.
I didn't
This is
freeze
a
it.
texture.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, if I was gonna mill like a steak or something like that, I think freezing it would probably be.
Next season.
Yeah. All right, any other questions?
How long did it take to do the whole process? Once you had it, you know.
Yeah,
secured it, started cutting.
the design was probably a few hours. The fixturing was maybe half an hour. The milling job itself was close to 90 minutes. And I could have done it way faster than that, kind of, you know, hindsight, you get 15 minutes into the job and it's like, oh, could have set it to go a little faster than what it was going, but do I stop now and change the G code? You know, because the Stinger doesn't have the same kind of like adjustability on the fly of the feed rate that some of our other Linux based, the Linux CNC controls have, so it's a little more of a fixed thing, but it was about 90 minutes. Oh,
So was it hard finding like speed and beat chart for finding?
yeah, the chip load is, it's not on any of the tables. All right.
It's a good, were you happy with how well the detail? I mean, do you feel like?
Yeah,
mean, it
I was happy with it. The detail was as good as I had hoped it would be.
Yeah.
I think, without going to like an 1/8 bit or something like that, which have been maybe 4 times as long.
Well, and just even the softness of, I mean.
Oh, yeah, like this, where it came off, I actually didn't do any cleanup. This looks rough here. I didn't like shave it clean or anything like that. I might have just wiped it off. But to get to that finish that you see there, that's the way it came off. The finish was good. I mean, I think it's recognizably the brand that's going. So,
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, it's kind of a dated scan. Really should get enough.
Albeit it might be dictated by the show. What would be the next fruit or vegetable that you would carve this?
I don't know.
I think a coconut would be.
A coconut would not. I don't think that would work very well.
Surface carving.
Yeah. Maybe you could engrave on a coconut.
Avocado.
Question.
How do you remove the perishable character?
Uh,
Like if you were to
yeah.
evolve this and
Well, I
show
can-
the same
I can
thing
show
in
you.
a year from now,
Let me show
what would you
you.
do to it?
So, yeah, Sadiq was saying maybe we ought to put it into a resin, but I don't know that a pineapple would survive.
Shrunken heads.
Inside, we were gonna
Gotta
dry.
dry it
Yeah,
out.
we were thinking of doing it to drying it, in a shrunken head style. It's this is
that's
the
great.
medium is sort of ephemeral. So this art was made and consumed over the course of a day.
No,
So
it no longer is.
yeah, no, it's gone.
Consumed? You
Oh,
did-
yeah,
you
absolutely.
did-
That's been
Yeah.
consumed.
I chopped it out.
Yeah, Chris, they say
Yeah, I'm
like
sure you chop.
you eat the heart of your enemy, it makes you stronger or whatever. Chris ate his own head out of fruit, so now he's smarter.
Now he's twice as smart.
So its useful life coming off the
Chris
table was
pineapple.
less than 24 hours?
No, it would have been fine for a few days more, I think. It was pretty fresh pineapple and
Oh, no, but in actuality, you ate it in 24.
yeah, it was like a day or two at the most. Yeah.
How was it?
Was
Yeah,
yeah, not pizza.
The beauty of the wood router, there's no oil dripping on it or anything. Like that. But the door axis, you're gonna get some of the oil off of the spindle. Yeah, maybe some sawdust.
I think there's a practical application for this.
I don't think so.
The Wisconsin State Fair, they carved the butter block of the, what's
Oh.
the name of the Milky Way, or no, she's the princess of Dairyland. They do the bust of that person in butter.
Yeah, so
Is
butter
it
you'd want to.
There you go.
Then
You
you can do
can
it. Yeah.
contact these people and say, hey, we can do this for you.
A large block of
Isn't that
cheese would
the
probably
empire?
really nice.
Yeah. Parmesan would be great.
The object is to get totally accurate and,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
you're right, human beings can
well,
sculpt.
that's a
Trying
good
to
thing.
take a job.
There's a lot of states have like, didn't Iowa have like a big butter smoking?
Minnesota, there's one too.
Yeah.
This could be.
Iowa, they could do
It's a Midwest
They
medium.
could sculpt
really,
that out.
Yeah.
I was frozen.
Did the whole wood shop smell like a kind of a?
No, it is. Just sort of disappointed about that.
Hawaiian theme?
The bag did a nice job of containing everything. I did have to wipe down the gantry after the fact because there was definitely some sticky pineapple juice on the gantry itself, but
But nothing else.
Any other questions for Scott?
Yeah, all right.
Anybody else got anything they want to share? Doesn't make you screen.